Evening and welcome to the City of Woodstock's public planning meeting. Tonight's meeting is an open public meeting as required by the Planning Act. This meeting will be live streamed to the city's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will also be posted on the city's website following the meeting. An agenda of the meeting can be found on the agendas, meetings, and minutes page of the city's website. This meeting is for information and discussion purposes only, and no decision will be made this evening. Council will make a decision on these matters at the regular council meeting to be held this Thursday. If you wish to address council at that meeting, you must submit a delegation form to the city clerk no later than 2 p.m. on Tuesday. A delegation form is available on the city website. If an application is denied, only the applicant or the minister may file an appeal with the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Only specified persons, public bodies, registered owners of land to which the plan may apply, the requester to amend the plan, and the minister may appeal the decision of the City of Woodstock to the Ontario Land Tribunal within 20 days of issuance of the notice of council's decision. Excluding the minister, any party wishing to make an appeal must make written or oral submissions to council at a public meeting. Please note that third parties, anyone who is not specified person or public body, do not have the right to appeal a decision for an official plan amendment to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Please keep your comments to planning matters only and avoid repeating comments that have already been expressed. If you have not provided oral or written comments but wish to receive formal notice of council's decision on the matter, please contact the clerk's department. The notice will provide further information on appealing the decision. The planner will be asked to present the planning report for each application. The applicant will then be provided an opportunity to make comments, followed by those wishing to speak in favor of the application, and then followed by those wishing to speak in opposition to the application. Prior to proceeding with the first application, does anyone wish to declare a pecuniary interest on any items that are on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, so I'll now call, or excuse me, I'll start with the first application number, so OP-24-05-8 and ZN 8-24-12, applications for official plan amendment and zone change, Caress and Care Nursing and Retirement Homes Limited and James Laval, 801 Walter Street. And now, Mr. Gilbert, go ahead.
Thank you. This application is to redesignate the subject property from community facility to low density residential and to rezone the property from community facility to an R2 zone. The lands are part of the overall property that's owned by Crescent Care Nursing Homes. These lands have been decided that they're surplus to the needs of the campus. And as such, they're looking to redesignate it and rezone it to allow them to dispose of it. There's an existing single attached dwelling on the subject property, which is proposed to be retained, and the that lot would meet all of the. It's already a separate lot, but the proposed R2 zone would meet all of the required setbacks relative to the existing dwelling. As such, staff are supportive of the application and recommend they be approved and supported.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any questions from members of council? Seeing none, I'll now call on the representative or the applicant on behalf of the representative, if they are in-house, to step forward. Not seeing anyone, so we will now move on to anyone in favor of this application. They can step forward. Seeing none. And I will now call on anyone in opposition of this application to step forward. Also seeing none, so we'll proceed to the next application. So ZN 8-24-14, application for zone change, City of Woodstock. Go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
This is a zone change to rezone a small portion of property currently owned by the city from M3-14, a special traditional general industrial zone, to M325. The lands are proposed to be merged with the adjoining parcel to the east, which is zoned M325. So the proposal will ensure that the final parcel is all located within one zone. A truck terminal is proposed for the lands which these will be added to, which is the permitted use in the M325 zone. Staff have no concerns with the application, recommend to be approved to provide for one consistent zoning category over the final lot size.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much. The applicant is the city of Woodstock, but we will just skip to, is there anyone in favor of the application that would like to step forward? Seeing none, is there anyone in opposition of the application that would like to step forward? Also seeing none, so we'll now move on to the third, ZN 8-24-15, application for zone change, City of Woodstock, additional residential units, ARUs. And go ahead, Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. This application results from the council resolution, excuse me, from the April 4th City Council meeting, where council directed staff to bring back amendments to increase the permitted height for detached accessory buildings from 4 meters to 6 meters, as well as to increase the percentage of floor area that a ARU can occupy from 50% to 60%. With respect to the accessory building height, staff of the opinion that the proposal is generally consistent and modest. The previous zoning bylaw from 1981 that was enforced in the city did allow for a 5-meter building height. So this proposal is a little bit beyond that, but is 6 meters. Staff also recommend that if the additional building height is adopted, that clarification be included in the zoning bylaw. That would clarify that the gross floor area cap of 75 square meters for accessory buildings would apply to the ground floor of the buildings. It wouldn't apply to the second story. So you'd still be able to have a building 75 square meters, and now it could be up to 6 meters in height, but it wouldn't trigger any additional relief required for the building area itself. With respect to the gross floor area cap, staff are of the opinion that it'd be appropriate to raise it from 50 to 60%, provided that there still remain a gross floor cap. The purpose of that cap is to ensure that the size of ARUs remain smaller relative to what could be considered a triplex, which still has to meet the required parking, has different setbacks, different amenity areas, and is still subject to development charges. With that, staff recommend that the proposed modifications be supported.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Are there any questions from members of council? Councillor Schadenberg, go ahead.
Yeah, from the chair through to Mr. Gilbert. I guess the first question would be the fact if you want to go to a 6-meter height, would that be to sort of say, well, that's the new law, so to speak? Or could you sort of say, well, 5 meters is fine, and if you want to go higher than that, you have to come back for a variance or you don't want to set a precedent to sort of say 6 meters is high enough, because there's different parameters based on the lay of the land, et cetera, that maybe 6 meters would be too much in some scenarios. Could we do it that it's still a case by case scenario that people have to come to us to ask for 6 meters?
Through the chair, the council direction was to amend it to 6 meters. Council could decide to choose 5, what it was before, but the council direction was 6 meters. So that would mean that as long as you met the lot coverage provisions and you could submit a grading plan that addressed concerns about stormwater and other issues, you'd be able to build to the 6 meters height, as however it's defined depending on your roof type. As of right, you wouldn't need any relief from Committee of Adjustment or City Council.
I guess as a follow-up to that, and I hate to ask about any specific scenarios, but the one at the corner of Wellington and Brant that's currently under construction, to me, in my opinion, that's still too high, and it's currently under construction. So obviously it's been passed now with a building permit from Mr. Wallace's office. Is that 6 meters height for that specific construction project?
I'll have to defer to Craig on that.
Madam Chair, through to the question. So on Wellington Street, that went through a minor grant. So they got relief to the 6 meters.
So what they're building is 6 meters then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'll just add, so anyone that wants to build a 2-story accessory structure to accommodate an ARU on the second floor basically requires a height of 6. It's pretty hard to accommodate that second story if the maximum height is, or any range from 4 to 5.
Mr. Mayor, you had a question? Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Through you, Chair, to Mr. Gilbert. My question is on the 60%. The square footage, of course, you're looking at, the possibility that you could, in some cases, build a larger place. Now, I understand the arguments, and I believe that's the only reason of like triplex, duplex type scenarios is why, planning's recommending having a cap at the 60%. Just thinking of a place that could put a 2-bedroom or a 3-bedroom place in to have another apartment. So say a bigger place, but let's say it was 75%, because you do need a mechanical room and a few other things that you'll never get 100%. But is this purely to make sure, development charges and the parking requirements and everything are stricter because of the size? Is that the idea?
To you, Chair. So currently at the 50%, well, if you go to 60%, you can have, your principal dwelling, would need to be larger than 1,700 square feet to hit that 60%. So if you wanted to build up to 100 square meters, the principal dwelling would need to be 1,700 square feet to hit that 100-meter cap at the 60%. But the purpose of keeping that cap in there is basically to differentiate between an ARU, which is meant to be affordable, and the trade-off to make it more affordable is to make it easier to construct, to have, reduced parking requirements, reduced zoning requirements, breaks on setbacks and everything else. But if it's beyond that size, like planning staff believe there should be some cap. Is it 100 square meters? I'm not 100% sure, but there should be a cap remain to differentiate between the triplexes and the larger, multiple unit apartments rather than the ARUs.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So I guess, yeah, with the questions on the 100 meters then, what would that give you? Would that give you a 2-bedroom maximum then? Is that fair to say?
If
Would
you
get a
ha-
2-bedroom out of that?
if you had, there'd be 1,076 square feet is 100 square meters.
Oh,
it'd
yeah,
be-
1,000, so yeah, that's a,
Be about 2 bedrooms.
okay size,
Yeah.
it's not tiny. Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from members of council? Councillor Martin?
Thank you. Just a really quick question. What was the date of that meeting where we passed a motion to ask staff to bring back this report?
Uh,
May,
April 4th.
April 4th. Thank you.
Through me to you, Mr. Gilbert, but yeah, I believe there was 2 motions. One was to change the height to 6 meters that passed, and then it was sitting at 50% and we advanced it to 60%. And you piqued my interest with, you said 1981 revised, so is that the last time that there was amendments to zoning provisions related to additional residential units? Or 1981 you mentioned?
No, sorry, the previous bylaw before the zoning bylaw in 2010 was from 1981, and that allowed for accessory building with a 5-meter height. The bylaw that came in 2010 reduced that down to 4 meters.
Thank you for clearing that up. Perfect. So any more questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Gilbert. Again, City of Woodstock is the applicant, and we'll just skip to if anyone is in-house that is in favor of this, they can step forward and speak to the application. Seeing none, and is anyone against the application, you can step forward. And if you could just state your name and address, please.
Ray Losi, 66 Young Street, Interkip. I don't agree with the hundred square meters. I mean, the whole thing is kind of basically trying to reduce it to one unit, it looks like. I mean, it says in the report here that you can have your full basement as a ARU. So if you built 2,000 square feet, you could have a 4-bedroom down there. You could have 3 teenagers with 3 cars. You could, like, the whole thing is kind of all sitting on the idea that somebody's gonna build something that you people think what it's gonna look like. So I think you should go and separate the units. If you want that additional unit to be 600 square feet, you can't really do much at 5. We done that other one at 535 or something. But it's small, but it's, you know, it's kind of a bedroom, but it's not. And then the other one in the basement, it was 900 and change square feet, small 2-bedroom. There were the outside walls. It's not, I think you count the outside walls, don't you? I believe you do, don't you, Craig?
Madam Chair, yes, we count the gross floor areas to the outside of the walls.
Yeah, it makes it quite small, but anyway, that's the issue, that the third unit's very important. I got 4 of them planned to go ahead right now, new builds. And what I done because of this is I've left the unit out of the garage, but I built an attic space that's accessible by a stairway. So if I have to, I'll have to go to the tribunal and get the thing approved, hopefully. Either that or we got attics all over the place that we could use for units, but we aren't going to. Because the basement units are 900 and some odd feet. And that leaves you nothing for the additional unit above the garage. So that's the same argument I had when we went to the committee of adjustment. So it is a big issue when it comes to building these things from scratch. And by the way, the tenants that you get on this thing so far have been fabulous and they love it. So I just wanted to just make comments about that. I think there's a problem with the way we done it communitively to maybe have 2 small units. One small unit I agree with, but the one in the basement, it sucks it up. Doesn't allow the other one to happen. So it's just what I wanted to say. Okay.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Schadenberg?
I guess just as clarification from our chair through to Mr. Losi. Based on the size of today's building lots, on the average, I mean, there's no such thing as a building lot that's 70 by 140 anymore in the city of Woodstock. Based on the fact that you have to have a furnace room and whatnot in the basement, 900 square feet for a basement apartment, that would be very difficult to do also, would it not? Again, based on the fact that you want some sort of a utility storage room for the main homeowner to have in their basement.
Yes, definitely. What we did in that particular unit on Sydenham is he used the furnace room for packing his stuff in there because he didn't have a whole lot of storage. You know, he has his own everything, his own appliances, his own furnace, his own heat pump. But you're right, doesn't leave a lot of room for additional storage. The primary unit was fine because it was large, but storage in the main level was, or in the basement level was small.
Was there any follow-up question there? No. Any further question? Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Through you, Chair, thank you to Mr. Losi. So I guess, yeah, I'm walking through with you in my head
Yeah.
here, thinking of the size, so I can see where the 100 meters squared would, and Mr. Gilbert, correct me if I'm wrong here, so let's say, and I guess I never really thought of it, you've got a 900 square foot unit in the basement.
Yes,
That means you can't put one above
no,
a garage
no,
because of that, you can't do both because of
No.
that 100 meter limit.
yes.
What do other, and this is through to Mr. Gilbert then, what do other places do in that case? Do they have a hard limit of 100 meter? Is this normal building practice? Cause kind of seems counterintuitive. I
Yeah,
understand what
it-
you're saying right now. You have one or the other, you can't have both. But yet we're trying to get more units.
Uh, Through the chair, to the mayor's question, some municipalities have 150 square meter floor cap. Some don't have a floor cap at all. They can be as large as they want. They just limit it to the number of units. Some limit it to limit the size in the detached accessory buildings. Those ones are always limited by the floor area of the accessory building. So that functions as a floor cap instead of having an overall one. Um, yeah, that's the range.
That's,
If I may continue, Chair, thank you. Then do you see this being an issue moving forward if we keep the 100 meter square for circumstances like this where we will be then cutting our own throat if we're trying to put more apartments in?
I think if you have ones where we could perhaps relook at the clause for the basement of not count the unit perhaps in the basement towards the gross floor area. If it's just gonna occupy the existing space. That's something that we could look at, because there already is the clause that, when we allowed one ARU per lot,
Right.
we broadened that to
That was then,
That was
which makes sense.
not to include the count towards the floor cap for the basement one. We could look at reinterpreting or clarifying that provision.
I would suggest, is that possible? Don't want to speak for council, but would that be possible to have that option available Thursday for discussion?
Yeah, staff could have that ready.
Yeah? Okay, thank you. Well, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions from council? Counselor Schadenberg?
I guess I see clarification from Mr. Gilbert, our planner. Was the whole idea of this to avoid sort of having triplexes all under one roof as opposed to, and calling them a single family home with two ARUs all on under the same roof? When it's in essence a triplex?
Uh, Through the chair, certainly once you get larger units, it becomes more of a triplex and less of an ARU. And as noted, then the city does miss out on the revenue as well as the units get bigger, then you have, more likelihood that the tenants drive or have more than one vehicle, and there's more parking conflicts. And we can't require more than one parking space per unit. So that's some of the reasons behind the overall floor area limits.
So I just have one question, Mr. Mayor. So back to Councillor Schadenberg's point about on a case-by-case basis, if this proceeds on Thursday just as is, because it's been in the queue for a few months, Mr. Losi mentioned going to the Ontario Land Tribunal because he would file an application with the Committee of Adjustments. They would likely turn it down, and then that would be the next step. So my question is that, what type of wiggle room, if any, at the Committee of Adjustments, could you focus back on that case-by-case basis? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming your units are successful and affordable to many in the city of Woodstock. So how do you identify that you're filling a need, but not, how are you checking all the boxes, I guess? It's a loaded question.
So if the proposed bylaw passed as included in the agenda, and you wanted the third unit that was greater than the 100 square meter floor cap, you need to submit either a minor variance or a zone change, basically to allow for the increase in floor area. Staff would review it through the floor test to see if it's desirable, appropriate. Is it likely to be parking conflicts? How much bigger is the the units and the 100-meter floor clap, we would compile all of that and provide a recommendation to the committee. And then they would make their own decision whether or not they thought it was appropriate. And then usually that process takes less than 45 days.
So just to follow up, there's already then that's in the works. There's those options there. So, thank you for that. Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Through to Mr. Gilbert, you mentioned a couple of times development charges and you're right, the city, it can't charge development charges on ARUs. That's why there's some concerns on the triplexes and everything else. But I'm curious what the city revenue would be in a development charge. If they would normally be allowed, do you understand what I'm saying? You know, what would be if it was a duplex, for example, and you were putting 2 units in at 100 square meters each, or I guess you can only go 60% on a secondary, but what would be if somebody applied for a duplex that way and one was 60% smaller? What's that dollar amount? Do you know offhand?
Madam Chair, to answer the question, so
Makes sense.
a single-family dwelling is approximately $28,000 for development charges.
Okay,
Semi-detached is 28,000 times 2.
oh, so it's just simply, yeah,
Yes.
you would just double it. Okay,
And
it's
an
per unit.
apartment is, I'm just guessing, I believe it's around 16,000. So the smaller the unit, it does drop
It does.
in price,
Okay.
and same as a townhouse, it's somewhere between 16, it's probably around 21,000. And if you want, I can send you.
No, I thought it was around that. I was just making sure I had it in my head that approximately 20,000. That's good. Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Well, I just want
Go
to
ahead.
comment about what I said about the basement unit. If you build a 1,500 square foot ranch, you can have a 1,500 square foot apartment in the basement, right? There's no limit to the basement. That's,
It's the third unit that. I
it's the
think-
third unit, but at the same time, you could have 3 teenagers in that 1,500 square feet with cars. So the argument about the cars, and a lot of that is traffic related, the argument is the idea that you're not gonna have people in there that have extra cars. Of course you are. You know, so I have a feeling the plan that I've done so far and the plans that I'm doing in the future with the unit above the garage that's minimum of 600 square feet is the way to go with this thing. And you'll get some. The other way, it's not worth it. You know, if you're gonna build for profit, which remember, we used to try to do that. But nowadays, when there's no sales in housing, maybe it's a good idea to build some rentals. You know, so anyway, that was all I wanted to say. Okay?
Thank you very
Thank you, and
much.
thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to step forward against this application? Seeing none. So that concludes tonight's meeting. A decision on these items will be made at the council meeting on Thursday, and I would now look for a mover. Counselor Martin, seconded by Mr. Mayor. All those in favor? The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.